Awesome. Welcome back to another episode of How to Make It in Toronto. Super excited for today's episode and really excited because this is our first episode of 2026. And we have our good friend back with us today, Mr. Howard Freedman, with more exciting news, more exciting topics that we're going to cover, things that I think are very important to just every day-to-day life, but things that are going to be impacting certainly students and their professional future moving forward today. So, hey, Howard, welcome back. How are you?
I'm very pleased to be here and looking forward to the podcast.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you. So I'm going to start off with, since our last conversation, what shifts have you noticed in regards to college planning and the financial aid landscape?
I think some of the biggest factors are, first of all, economics. Certainly, they've played a major role, not only in Canada, but all over the world. And I think because of it, including inflation and other factors that we know about, I think parents and families are starting to really think very seriously about affordability and how far they can go. So I think it's a matter of balancing what's important and how important is college and who should be responsible. I think the other factors that have changed is, which we'll talk about shortly, is technology and AI. I think the role of AI and technology certainly has changed the resources that are available in learning today and going forward. I think the fact that there are so many options beyond college that students really have, there's really no need to panic to say it's okay if you don't go to the most expensive college in the world. You have other choices. Recently, I read that there's over 5,000 colleges in the U.S., and you add Canada, you can add to that number. So there's a lot of choices. It's a matter of really, for people today, based upon those factors and the real world and the reality of it is, what do you want to do and how much you're willing to pay for it. I think those are some major factors rather than can I get into college. The answer is yes, you can get into college. You want to make sure you're in the right one.
Yeah, that's totally true. And from your perspective, especially in today's environment, today's day and age, how is today's college-bound student different from even 5 years ago, or maybe in my time, 10, 15 years ago as well? What would you say some of the biggest differences you're seeing from your perspective?
From the college students?
Yeah.
In terms of specifically their attitude?
Yeah, I would say attitude, obviously the impact of technology and how they're approaching, and even in regards to financial planning, we're going through a kind of a tougher economic time, for example. Then I guess, well, there's been stages of, economies going up and down, but how are you seeing how students are approaching college differently, certainly now, in comparison to maybe 5, 10 years ago, from a financial aspect, number one, but also even with the influence of the types of technologies that are coming in. You have AI now where you can go on and get an essay written, but now professors have AI programs that can read your essays and can tell if it's written by that. So
yeah,
what's your feedback on that?
I think students are a little freer in terms of making their choices in terms of deciding on college. I don't think it's as much of a mandate as it used to be in the past that, your parents said, you must go to college, else you'll never turn out to be anything. I think that's really changed. I think students have more of a say. I think there's many more resources available, including some of the work I do, but also resources online, etc. To the point that I think it's information overload. I think there's too much of the same thing, which makes it look very daunting to say, oh, I read this, I read that. Ultimately, it's going to come to the students making the right choices. I think the third thing, the reality of community colleges, part-time learning, um, you know, uh, online learning, um, and different things like that uh, give the student and the family many choices that may essentially end up in a college degree, especially through uh, going to a 2-year college and then transferring. So I think there's more choices. I think it's scarier too, because I think there's an awful lot of pressure. And again, there's, beyond reading about college, just pick up the newspaper, pick up magazines and see really what's happening in the world and try to understand it, um, really understand it and how it may impact the student in their future, and how well expensive college may impact that future and how well they're going to do to survive in their future endeavors.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that, and that's totally true. Certainly, your perspective that we shared there. I know we kind of just touched on it, and I'd love to kind of dive deeper into it. So, obviously, AI is transforming every industry at this time. How do you see artificial intelligence, particularly impacting students academically, in terms of how they're approaching their work or even how they think?
I've thought about that a lot. And one thing I think might help to answer that question is how are things when I went to school, okay, in comparison to AI? So
Mm,
when I went to college and graduate school, um, there were different technologies then that, and probably the biggest one is getting a handheld computer and or a calculator.
mm,
And teachers back then said, and I remember in a statistics class, they said, you're going to get your final exam in statistics, but no calculators are allowed. So we had to remember the formulas, and we spent more time memorizing the formulas than we did measuring the results, because all the professor was looking for was answers, not an interpretation. So nowadays you could buy that same computer that costs maybe a couple $100 for $1 in the dollar store. It'll
mhm,
do essentially the same thing, but it didn't really change education back then, other than the fact that I think what happened is we had to memorize more stuff. Uh, Back then, it was rote, it was memorization, it was regurgitating of facts,
mm,
um, which in real life became meaningless. And
mm,
then, as you progress, the you had to learn programming language, and then do simple algorithms. How much is 10 divided by 4? That
mm,
was a big deal. And then moving time ahead, we ended up with the personal computer,
mm,
and that gave us answers, okay, and gave us a means that we really didn't have to learn how to write. You didn't have to, penmanship wasn't that important anymore. It
mm,
was a gold typewriter. But, you know, moving ahead to AI, look at AI as a tool. It's a tool that, number one, presents current information. But in college, um, I was reading an article by uh, the president of Northeastern University, and where I attended, and he was talking about AI consisting of technology, data, and human literacy. So all those three things really are used by AI. But the biggest thing to the question is not so much the data, but what to do with it. If you were able to write, the professor gave you an assignment to write about something, and you went to AI and said, oh, I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to go with my buddies to get some pizza. what did the student learn? Not
Hmm.
much. But if AI was used to provide data, and also, which many people don't necessarily talk about, is that AI information is often backed up by the sources in which they got it. So you got all those resources that are resources you could look up that went into the AI data. So that's something that's overlooked. So you're looking for instant information, like to zip through college. But ultimately, when you get out, what skills did you learn to survive in an age where AI is going to be very much a part of it? Just like the calculator, just like the PC or whatever. It's a tool. And it's a matter of taking this tool and learning how to drive it and get information. But it just doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. And I think in terms with that, in conjunction with it, is that professors and teachers are going to have to redesign their curriculum to look at AI as a resource rather than an enemy.
Mm.
It's a resource of information, just like going to the library or wherever. It's just a faster resource. So the faster you get the information, the more time you'll have to analyze it and
Mm.
start thinking. And I think, as far as impacting the college student, I think that's what life is all about: thinking, resolving, and interpreting, and whatever. It just gets you there faster.
Mm. I totally agree. And yeah, as you're saying, there's so many strong use cases that can certainly benefit a student today, and obviously impact their performance based on, as you're mentioning, things like resource, or research, and finding that information a lot easier. Definitely saving time in terms of maybe ideation and how they want to think of something, and execute it, because it can give you those examples as well. And so you obviously work certainly more focused in financial planning, and planning out, and having a plan in regards to how to be successful when going into college, in regards to managing your finances and getting into college. If I was a high school student right now and I've got access to AI, um, what's some advice that you could give me in terms of how I can utilize AI to help me in creating a plan, and as well in terms of how I can use AI to maybe you know find the right college or right fit for me. Do you have any tips on that, or how would you approach it if you were in the situation?
I think with AI, that's an excellent question.
Mhm.
You have to maybe sit down or whatever, make a whole list of questions you can ask AI. You
Mm.
know, for example, what is the best, you know, what are the best colleges for students who want to take X major? What professions are there that pay the most or will pay the most? And the answer to that question, nobody knows after
Mm.
you graduate. Um, which schools offer the most financial aid? Are there schools that help students that have, learning challenges? What are the best schools in the Northeast that offer these programs? What schools have the best retention rate? Which schools, so you keep on going. And then each question, when you go through AI, will ask another question.
Mm.
So will answer generally and say, well, um, what are good colleges? What are the best colleges to teach business?
Mm.
And it'll list them. And then it'll say, do you want more information? But I think before you do it, the best advice, and I'll keep repeating this,
Mm.
is you have to have a plan. You can sit at AI, at your computer, use AI all day, but what are you looking for? And without that plan, whether you use AI, you go online, you go to the bookstore, you buy my book, whatever. You have to kind of get a good idea of what you're interested in and what you want to do. And before you go crazy on AI, because it's almost limitless. What you can do. You can also have fun with AI. So I think the important thing is, again, keep on path in terms of what you want to accomplish, what type of school, what is your purpose, and then start, drilling down and saying, and asking these questions. Ask for phone numbers, ask for contact information, ask for sources where they got that information, where they get that information. Say, this is the best school. So that's a really good way to help you um, take the data that you have and use it in a way that it could pare down whatever choices you make. And then it also really enhances your ability to think and say, that school offers that major. I never even thought of it. Yeah, let me pursue it. So uh, I hope that answers your question, but I really think that you don't just jump in the water until you're ready to swim.
Yeah.
And I don't
No,
swim. I nearly drowned 3 times. So I don't jump in the water, but if you were to swim, that's what I mean.
yeah, yeah. No, I love it. And definitely the question, for sure. Let me ask you a question, maybe from the other side, and maybe from the aspect of, do you think that right now colleges are adapting quickly enough to prepare students for an AI, influenced workforce? Like, how do you think colleges are doing in prepping students for that?
Excuse me, as I said, there's like 5,000 colleges.
Mm,
I think, first of all, colleges can't escape it. It's
mm,
here. It's here. And I think colleges have to um, modify their curriculums in such a way to include it somehow to some degree. If you want AI, go into computing, get GBT, you got it. You're an AI now. Okay. That's all it takes. But I think things that they need to do is they have to look at their core values. They have to look at, how much technology. I think they have to incorporate more technology in um, the uses of AI, how it can be used effectively in the academic and real world environment, because this is something they're going to have to use all the time.
mm,
Will it do away with jobs? Maybe some of them.
mm,
I think I kind of look at it. There was a book written by Stephen Covey years ago, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And he kind of
mm,
drew a quadrant of 4 boxes, and the one box people get stuck in is to do repetitive stuff that doesn't add value and doesn't help you to grow. So you're churning out the work, you're doing everything, but ultimately you want to move out of that box and move into a more creative box, because we need people to think and to change the world. We need it because the workforce is getting older. We need creative, exuberant people that love what they do and can bring good things to society,
mm,
to help within the medical field, to help within the technology fields, uh, you know, to help with anything creative.
mm,
Those are just really a few things, but I think those are the types of jobs and things that will be in demand in the future. Okay, except I think they'll be much broader. I think there'll be more choices. More selective, more choices,
yeah.
and so I would say with AI, if I gave people a warning list, I'd say, one, don't be afraid of it. Don't let it run your life. Just learn it. Learn how to use it. Um, just as you learn to use a personal computer or other things. It's a friend. It's not an enemy. But don't abuse it. Don't abuse it. Um, it's not going to answer a question as to what flavor pizza you should get. But that's not important.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. I think right now it'll only get better and better and better and better and better. So, if you're smart, just learn it every day. It has a lot of power to, learn, buy books or look online, all the things you can do, um, other than asking you questions.
Yeah. I totally agree. Definitely working in AI, that's something that, and AI adoption particularly, that's something we definitely share with people is jump in and use the tool and see how it can help you, because it really can be that aid and really, push you to that next level. Once you truly understand how to utilize it and how it can actually help you, and really take it to the next step. So let's jump into this. I know this is something you and I have discussed before, but it's never too early to plan for college, right?
Mhm.
And so let's start off with, at what age do you think families should realistically begin planning for college? And that's from like a financial aspect and a strategic aspect.
Um, I would look at planning at the beginning of the freshman year. Okay. And the reason for it, I mean, you can plan anytime,
Mm,
you don't have to wait, but by the beginning of the freshman year, students are maturing a little bit. They're different. They're not little babies anymore.
yeah.
But the biggest there's two reasons for it. One, it'll help the student to become a great student and qualify for merit-based aid in terms of their academic excellence.
Mm,
So, and it really counts early, if you look at freshman, sophomore, and junior years, those are the core years that are used for colleges. So I think it's a good idea to encourage kids, or students, to do community service things. It's really good
why
to
would you
be
say? I
to be
I know it's great for the sorry, that's my dog. I know it's great for, obviously, experience, but and obviously colleges like to see that, your, the variety of your character. But like, could you expand on, why you think it's great to do community service and the value of that, for example, to
Yeah.
a college selection committee? Yeah.
And I think along with it, if you can arrange it,
Mm,
talk to the guidance counselors, even though they're busy with seniors,
mhm.
find out what prior graduates have done, what kind of colleges have they gone to, what do the colleges look for in terms of the students, in terms of merit-based aid. It's certainly a good time also for parents to do some financial planning. That is important. They shouldn't be afraid to say, "Well, I don't want to earn too much money because I'm not going to get aid." Well, as they say, bird. It's like it's better to have it so you don't have to pay interest on it. But I think even to save a little will help, even if you don't know what college the student's going to. And I think, as you go through that path and say, look, I want to be an engineer. Well, make sure you take the right courses, take AP courses, um, get involved with different clubs, um, get the biggest GPA. Now, again, there may be students who don't want to go to college. That's okay. I mean, some schools have, trade programs, or, you might want to go to another high school that offers, mechanical things. And there's nothing to be ashamed of, nothing at all, because that's where their aptitude was. I'm reading a book now. It's an old book. It's called about Stephen Jobs,
Mm,
which And he was he was a genius, but he was a little bit of a kook in a way. And he went to school, he went to college, and he just didn't like the courses. He said, these courses are just not for me. And again, they made an exception for him. But he took courses, they let him take courses that he liked and what he could benefit from.
Mm.
And he took a class in calligraphy.
Oh,
And what he learned from it is, simplicity, how things, it taught him something that he used later in his life rather than taking English 101.
yeah.
That's kind of the thing that a lot of students, grapple with. They just really don't know, if these courses, they lose interest in some courses. Okay. So I think also if you could talk to people, even if you don't go to school and some young person that graduated and said, take this course or take this course with Mr. Jones or whatever. It's better to know. Now, let's bear in mind
Mm.
that there are different people and different socioeconomic people. Okay. You got people that have a lot of money and they can send their child to get college test prep and get the best advice and everything. And money isn't an issue. They just want their child to get into the best college. So those are people, yeah, I help some, but they just really want to get into the best college. And then the people at the other end that don't have money, they want to get aid or maybe send their child to a state college or a community college, or maybe the student's exceptional and they get merit aid. It's all these people. If you were to draw a curve, you see all the people in the middle. That's who we're basically who we're talking about, because the haves, the ones that have a lot of money, they can do what they want. Not all of them, because not all of them have good students. Okay, and then you have the ones who can merely make ends meet, but they can get aid and they can start off another way. So we have to, when we talk about these things, we're talking primarily about the middle class. We're
Yeah.
talking about those are the people, and what I'm sharing is beneficial to everybody. But from the financial side, you can't have as much as you want if you're, in a poverty level. You get some aid, but you
Yeah.
still can send your child to college
Yeah.
or someplace. Nobody should be barred from going to college,
Exactly.
except the choices may be more limiting.
Yeah. And so I know that based on that, and then one of my next questions was going to be beyond, for example, saving money. What does early planning look like especially if you're looking at someone in the middle class and how they want to actually prepare themselves and plan for college?
Beyond money or
Beyond saving money, what are
oh,
some
okay.
tips that you can give people?
I think the process itself is. I'm going to answer the question maybe a little differently. There's two things parents have to look at, or three things. One is accumulating assets,
Okay.
earning income. That's really the second thing. In looking at the family's financial future. So assets, when families really get hung up in assets and stuff, they don't really count as much as income in terms of aid. So it's a matter of taking what assets you have, use what you need for everyday living, etc.,
Mhm.
and then putting some away for college. you can't get hung up and let your emotions, and hurts a lot of people. They have an emotional need to pay for their child's college. They're so stressed, so pressured because emotionally they they would feel terrible if their child didn't go to college. So I think you have to kind of talk to somebody, a financial planner, an accountant, etc., to see what the future will bring. Because what you can't forget is that if a parent wants to save money to pay for college, and then you look at it beyond their graduation, what are they going to have left when they're closer to retirement than the student?
Yeah.
So they have to really look at a much bigger picture, in terms of where does this fit in, and where does it fit in if there's another child? Where does this fit in terms of um, sending your child to college? And the next piece is communicating to the point that there's a discussion between the child and the family in terms of responsibility for paying for the school.
Mm.
That's very important. And then, along with it is accountability. I think students have to be accountable to their parents in terms of, are they making the grade there? Are they flunking out or whatever because they have to pay? And I think ways of paying for college, there are a multitude of things. Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be a loan, but again, you're throughout this process I'm describing, look at it in terms of taking a piece of clay that doesn't have any foundation or shape, and then you're molding it. You're molding it into this big, beautiful sculpture. Well, it's
Yeah.
the same thing in a way with the students. You're helping to mold them. So when they're ready to move on to college, they will be in demand.
Yeah.
They'll be in demand, and the colleges are willing because they want to have good students that are going to stay. And eventually, years after they graduate, they're going to be, benefactors, philanthropists. So
Mm.
again, these are the child that you have to keep talking to them, but don't push them. Don't push them.
Yeah.
Um, and then, so there's look, like I said, there's ways of paying for anything. But you have to have a budget and say, this is how much we can pay. And this is how much you're going to have to pay. You decide. If you
Mhm.
want to go to state college, you'll only have to take 10,000 loan. If you want to go to pricey private college, you may have to take 50. When you graduate, you're going to owe 200,000 plus. What do
Mm.
you want? What is more important to you?
Yeah.
That's kind of the way it goes.
Okay. I think that's some really great advice that you shared. Um, so what are some, if as a family that may not be aware, obviously, and I know I'm over here in Canada, there's also different opportunities that are in the US, is what are some lesser known financial aid opportunities that families should know of um, when looking to apply to college or prepare that college plan, financial plan with their child?
Well, go to Las Vegas is one way. I think if if you have enough money, you want to have a good time, go to the bank, take get several rolls of quarters, and you might hit the jackpot. But the probability of that happening is relatively low.
Yeah.
I think I'll offer many that I think one is working part-time for somebody that offers college tuition assistance. That's one way. They'll reimburse or subsidize the student.
Mm.
I think uh, part-time learning is another way that you
Mm.
can work
Yeah.
and uh, do it part-time. online learning, another way. Going to schools that offer experiential learning, or in effect co-op jobs where you can work, while you go to school. Um, uh, you know, in the U.S. at least, they offer work study where you can, do part-time work. I think if people have, if parents have businesses, it may be a good opportunity for these students to
Mm,
work in business to earn some money that could be put away for college, legitimately. I'm not saying give the child a job licking stamps, but maybe an opportunity to learn certain skills and save money for college.
mm.
I think it's not so terrible to hit grandma and grandpa. Um, no, seriously, I think because uh, the money they contribute doesn't count uh, towards the assets when this FAFSA form is done.
Mhm,
So I think it's a good thing to do. I think sheltering money, be cautious. Many people shelter it in terms of investments. Be cautious because you're sheltering it, which means you're making it unavailable to you. But how much are we talking about? And that's why it's so important
mhm,
to crunch the numbers. I think, do your research with the college, see what type of financial aid they give out. Let's say one of the things is at an early stage, look for scholarships. A lot of people wait until they're ready, but look at outside scholarships, um, to see what you might qualify for and to establish relationships with people.
mhm,
I think many parents can go into what they call installment payment plans, where they're not borrowing money, but they're setting aside so much
mm,
money and they pay a certain percentage each month without any interest. I don't feel that strongly about taking home equity loans, um, only because the parent is liable for the money if the student should fail. I think students should explore the military. I think that's always, it's not that easy to get in, but some people may be suited to go into the military, and then when they get out, they'll they'll get money.
mhm. Was that
Mm.
something you did? Did you go into the military prior to college? I know you had
I
mentioned.
went. I went. I was in the reserves for
Mm,
6 years. I was in the military, but I went to college. It was a different age. I was taught to save money. That's
mm,
what I was. My mother taught me to save my money for college.
mm,
And I didn't buy toys when I was young. I put
mm,
my money away for college, and I did that. I was a co-op student, made money for co-op. I was a commuting student. So you have to look to your question. The other
mm,
side of it is how can you save money? How
mm,
can you cut expenses? Because that is a way of saving money.
mm.
Examples, if you have a car, take it off the road. You don't have to pay insurance on the car.
Yeah.
Maybe don't want to live on campus if that's possible. Um, you know, be disciplined in terms of, working during the summer. So, I can go on and on and on and on, but those are things that people should think of and they should think of early. I mean, if they want to, in the US, have 529 plans, savings plans,
Mm,
take, even when a child is born, just put it away and don't really think about it. But it won't, the point that I want to make to your listeners is um, the important things about having assets is learning how to manage them um, properly so they're not going to impact your need for aid. The biggest thing that impacts it is income.
mm,
Remember that you could have um, you can have $1 million in the bank, but you're on, government assistance, you may qualify. I mean, it's as crazy as that is, you may qualify.
Awesome. And so I want to switch the subject and kind of get into, managing the stress that comes with moving to college, right? Everyone experiences that. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion when you're making that move, and it's a massive part of someone's life. A big season, you could say. So, what are some of the biggest emotional stressors you see families experience, and what are some things you would share in terms of how to overcome those?
Okay, I think there are several. Every day we deal with stressors, so it's not new. Some are worse than others. Believe it or not, the worst stressors I personally have, is when I wake up in the middle of the night and I just think of everything, important to know. And I get up in the morning and I'm like a basket case. And as Dale Carnegie once said, that 99% of our worries never come true. They never come true.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think, stress is something, the biggest driver of it is time. Because if people don't manage their time well, that's going to create stress. So if a person has a child going to college and says, "Oh, I'm not going to worry about that. They're only a freshman. We'll worry about that when they're a senior year. We'll visit the colleges and all that." And then before you know it, it's junior, senior year, and you're all stressed. "Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. I don't know what happened to the money in the bank. Oh, yeah, we bought a new car with it. Oh, darn it, I thought we were going to save it for college. Oh, my friend, my friend told me their kid got into college and they got a lot of money, and our child didn't." So a lot of it is listening to other people that are not authorities, and you get a lot of misinformation, and that turns into worry, and worry turns into stress and anger and fear and resentment. And that's why I've said it in my book, it's very important for families to sit and talk about these things ahead of time. I think that's really important. And the reason for it is a good reason. The student that goes to school and they talk to the guidance counselor, we've talked about that in another way, but I don't know if you can hear me okay. And they were talking to their guidance counselor, and they said, "Okay, Carl, I really think that you have the aptitude to go into engineering. Okay, so you're really happy, and you come in. I think maybe you should apply to MIT, Harvard, Stanford, all the Ivies, because you're top notch." And but the Ivies are in your parents are making some good money and all that, and you come home and say, "Mom, Dad, my guidance counselor said that I could go to the Ivies. I'm really smart."
Yeah.
And you say, "Well, we got to talk about this. We really have to talk about it." And okay, Carl, do you know how much it costs? "No, I don't know." "Well, maybe we should talk about it. Maybe I should call the school." So it's almost like it's great, but maybe you should go to state school. Maybe they'll get, or maybe those schools, maybe an Ivy is not is too good, and they're not going to give much scholarship money. Maybe you should go to another. So again, it's going to be much more stressful if you don't have a discussion. They do their application, you get into a top-notch school, and they said, um, we're happy to inform you you've been accepted to the school. Um, the cost is 78,000. We've given you the $10,000 scholarship. Congratulations. And then you don't know, you don't read further to say that, well, that means that we're going to have to come up with 60,000, and I'm not prepared. And then you run off to your room, you slam the door, you scream, you put your music on as loud as it could possibly go. You're really nasty because you're frustrated because you didn't talk about it. So that stressful decision could be um, minimized if more research was done, more discussion, more number crunching. Stress is time. We look at it, and I put a calendar in my book. You do have time, but you have to realize that the way it works with the FAFSA, they look at income from the prior year, and they don't realize that it's based upon last year's income. Okay. So I'm talking about the US only. So the form is based on last year's income. So if you were to do one, let's say in October 2026, it's based on the prior year's income, like 2025 or whatever. So you have to kind of look at it and say, you got to do your number crunching. You got to laugh. I always say that you have to find ways to laugh and have some fun and look forward to visiting campuses. You just have to be realistic. I think you can't, again, let your emotions rule your decisions, or especially your financial decisions. And I think you have to, throughout this process, make the student accountable for their grades, for everything they do, and be honest with you. And that's by developing rapport. If a neighbor's kid went to a school and got a lot of money, good luck to them. That's nice. You're not paying the bill, and they're not paying your bill.
Yeah.
Do what makes the most sense for the student and the parent.
I totally agree. And I think that's phenomenal advice. I'll ask one last question as we close up. Obviously, we're going to be doing a series of these interviews, and to get more of your advice, and just helping a lot of our listeners who happen to be students get a better understanding of how to plan, how to look out for their future as well in terms of the type of tools they're using, obviously regarding AI, and obviously and today, and how we've covered how to manage stress. So to wrap it up today, I just wanted to ask you is, like, if a family's listening today, what are 3 action steps they should take in regards to preparing either themselves or their child for their financial future in going to college?
Okay, I think the first thing is to take an inventory of their financial position. I think to take a look at what they have in asset savings. If they can go to a financial planner, I think they have to look at this as one step along the way in terms of in relation to retirement, relation to long-term care, in relation to other things, and put it all in perspective. I think that's really important. It's not anything to make anybody feel bad, but you have to look at your whole family's financial future. I think the second thing that's really important is to leverage your merit-based aid by working your butt off to be a good student. Okay, and that starts early in the game. I think the third thing is reading up about the different colleges, what they're looking for, which are the best colleges and which are the best jobs. Because ultimately, with all those three things, after 4 years, and it could be longer if they go to grad school, they have to know what they're working towards. So I think you have to kind of look into, what are they working towards, and how much is this going to pay? What's the return on their investment? And I think by looking at it that way, everybody's on the same page, and they're all communicating, and they know what the expectations are. That's what's important.
That's perfect. Howard, thank you for all the advice. Looking forward to more conversations with you. A lot of great takeaways for today, and looking forward to our next chat. We'll try and schedule something and make sure we can continue this chat. Maybe do another one next Friday as well. But thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. All the great knowledge, all the great tips. Looking forward to having you back on the podcast. Thank you so much.